In today's class, we shall discuss Eisenstein's theory of montage of collision. Eisenstein's theory could be understood in two levels. One is his primary or initial theory, which was montage of attractions, and second is his developed idea of montage, which was reflected as montage of collision. Montage of attractions are based on a kind of agitational form which Eisenstein introduced by being influenced by prolet cult theatre. But Eisenstein's idea of attractional montage was based on association, while Eisenstein's developed theory of montage was changed towards collision or conflict. Though Eisenstein's theory was basically based on agitational attractional form, the logic behind it was montage of association. Associational montage originally was an idea of V.I. Pudovkin. Pudovkin was one of the mentors of Sergei Eisenstein, and according to Pudovkin, montage is like bricks arranged to construct a building. So, different sorts of montage are joined together according to Pudovkin to give rise a meaning. Pudovkin's montage, associational montage, mathematically could be said that A plus B plus C is equal to D, where A, B, C are different sorts. When they are joined together, they give rise to a completely different meaning D. Eisenstein, after 1925, developed his theory towards montage of collision. According to him, montage of association is the primary level of montage, but the developed level is montage of collision. The idea of collision or conflict he draws from Marxist philosophy. In Marxist philosophy, contradiction is the driving force of society and history. According to Marxist logic, the dominant force in a society of history is thesis, and the thesis dialectically, in a dialectical process, generates an antithesis, which is the opposition of the thesis. And thesis and antithesis finally collides together and gives rise to synthesis. Now, synthesis means the equilibrium in a society, or it could be the revolution in a society. Eisenstein uses this form of contradiction and conflict in the plane of cinema, which he actually derives philosophically from Marxism. Eisenstein explains, in philosophy, it's abstract, it appears abstract, and the abstraction takes place in the level of thought. But Eisenstein explains, in art, it's concrete, that means it is displayed in a form. Now, the art, like philosophy, he argues, is dominated by and driven by the logic of conflict. He explains further that in art form, the conflict or contradiction comes from the according to society, first, second, according to nature, and third, as far as methodology is concerned. First, social. Eisenstein, being a Marxist, believes that society is based on some kind of contradictions, and these contradictions are driving force of the society. The work of art is, the function of art is to display and to explain these contradictions and conflict in society. Second, according to nature, Eisenstein says that natural logic is a kind of organic logic which is pre-given, and now in modernity the society and history is driven by another logic which he says, explains as the logic of industry or industrial logic. Eisenstein says in construction of an art form, these two logics collides together. That means there is a collision of natural logic which generates organic form and industrial logic which generates rational form. So the conflict of these two finally is the preoccupation of an art form. Third, the concern related to methodology. Eisenstein says, since in the domain of social and in the domain of natural, the art tries to manifest the conflict or contradiction in society or nature, therefore art must generate a proper method which can reflect these conflicts. Now, according to Eisenstein, this proper art form which can reflect the elements of contradiction and conflict is montage of collision. Eisenstein derives the examples of montage of collision from different art forms. One such art form is Japanese hieroglyphics. In Japanese culture, the language is a pictorial language where different kind of pictures finally comes together to generate complicated meaning. So Eisenstein takes example from Japanese culture how the idea of collision finally gives rise to a meaning. Eisenstein says that in Japanese culture, I plus water means crying. Mouth plus dog means barking. So, this kind of function of Japanese language where two different objects, two different signifiers finally gives rise to a signifier which is of completely different meaning. So, according to Eisenstein, conflict or collision in different forms, in different cultural, art, linguistic forms are already there in our practice. And Eisenstein says that his montage of collision is inspired from these forms, though it's primarily inspired from Marxist logic. It tries to draw different elements from, for example, Japanese culture and from other cultural forms. So Eisenstein says montage in the level of cinema must be based on collisions or conflicts. The conflict could be in two levels. One is the conflict between the shots or among different shots, say the conflict between shot A and shot B, a conflict between shot A, B and C, or the conflict may exist within the shot. That means a shot is composed of different elements. For example, in a shot there are graphic patterns, in a shot there are different figurative expressions, in a shot there are the use of a proper lens. So Eisenstein says that the elements within the shot also could be arranged according to the logic of collision, and therefore the logic of collision finally in between two shots, among the shots and within the shot gives rise to his idea of montage of collision. Eisenstein explains that montage of collision exists in different level. For example, the montage of collision could be one graphic collision. We can draw an example from Battleship Potemkin's Odessa step sequence, where we can find the huge wide staircases of Odessa step, where different steps actually in a wide angle shot looks like that different graphic lines, and there are conflicts among graphic lines. This is graphic conflict. Conflict lies in different other planes. For example, there could be conflict of planes. We can again draw example from Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin's Odessa step sequence, where we can find that a group of mass is being attacked by the army. So there are two planes, that from the upper steps the army advances, and in the lower steps of the staircases there is a chaos and there are victims. So the upper part of the staircases and the lower part of the staircases, these two planes are there in a situation of conflict and collision. So it's another level of conflict of montage of collision. It's manifested in the level of plane. There are many other levels where one can deduce this montage of collision. Another level is, for example, conflict of volume. This takes place within the shot. In a shot taken by Eisenstein, he shows a bureaucrat working on his table. So he shows the camera, he places camera in such a way that the piles of files before the bureaucrat who is sitting in the chair looks huge. So files looks huge, and behind the stack of file there we find the bureaucrat, and his figure looks small, so because his figure is pushed to the background slightly, and the camera shows the whole thing in such a way that files looks huge. The piles of files looks huge, and the figure of the bureaucrat looks tiny. So there is a conflict of volume Eisenstein constructs in this plane. Conflict could be constructed in the level of lighting too. For example, if a shot is taken in a illuminated way with a proper light, the next shot is taken in a slightly darker tone, then the conflict of lighting in between two shots happens. Also, conflict of lighting could be there in the level of within the shot. We can draw example from Eisenstein's Ivan the Terrible, where we find the image of Ivan, Tsar Ivan. He is in the royal palace. Some part of the palace is in darkness and some part is well illuminated with the light of lamp. Now it creates a conflict between two shades of lighting, which generates a meaning, that is, the meaning is the mental or psychological situation and dilemma of Tsar Ivan. So lighting, apart from lighting, there could be a conflict of tempo. Now tempo, the conflict in tempo is like that. Again we can draw example from Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin, that in a sequence when Battleship Potemkin is coming towards Odessa steps, it's a sequence of morning. Eisenstein cuts one shot to another shot and the series of shots in a slow montage. So the transition of shots, everything inside the shot, within the shot, are moving in a slow way. But if we contrast this slowness of tempo with the first cutting in the Odessa Steps massacre sequence, these two parts of the montage sequence, that is, one is when Battleship Potemkin is arriving at Odessa, everything is a slow tempo, and the very first tempo with which the next part of the sequence is completed, that means through the Odessa step sequence. These two parts generates a conflict, and these two conflicts generates finally a particular kind of desired meaning. Now the conflict, the idea of conflict as far as film technology is concerned could be in different other levels, different other complicated and intricate levels too. One is, Eisenstein says that conflict between matter and viewpoint. Sometimes we observe some shots where the matter is shown in a candid camera, or the matter is shown where the camera shows it slightly diagonally, which creates a kind of unstable equilibrium in the stasis of the object, and this dynamism created by the existence of the object and the proper kind of camera angle chosen by the film director creates a kind of conflict. So conflict could be there in every level of Eisenstein's film. Eisenstein actually observes conflict as a universal form of his film. Now, the theory of conflict he later developed in his film October. There is a sequence in October where Eisenstein creates the montage of collision between the images of different static objects, and Eisenstein says this is also a level of montage when static objects are shown in a montage sequence with a first cutting where different static objects collide with one another with its form, in its form, in its content, in its and finally this conflict gives rise to a thematic meaning. This thematic meaning is derived, according to Eisenstein, from the collision of different objects. Sometimes the collision or conflict is created in the level of, that is, he says that the event and its temporal nature. What is this? We can draw an example from slow motion or fast motion used in film, which is the actual event takes place in normal pace, but the filmmaker creates it, displays it with a slow motion or fast motion, where the actual event space and the space created or constructed by montage creates a kind of collision between these two, between the actual pace and the constructed pace. We can draw an example again from Eisenstein's film October, where the October opens up with an image, with a set of images of Tsar Alexander's statue is being brought down by a revolutionary mass. Now, in the middle of the film, Eisenstein shows that the reactionaries are gaining power, and they gained power so much that they pushed the revolutionaries to retreat back for some times. Now, how thematically and with a montage, which means the conflict between an event and its temporal nature, how it is manifested. Eisenstein shows the same statue which was being brought down by the revolutionary masses is coming back to its own position with the use of slow motion technology and using back motion. So, this kind of filmic technology, where we can understand that a statue cannot come back in its own position by natural course. It's being there with the help of film technology, which is used by the filmmaker. And this kind of conflict gives rise to a meaning. The meaning is not at all related to the object which is dealt in the shot. The statue is being taken to is going back to his own position means a change of political power. So the conflict actually generates the meaning of the change of political power. This is a way Eisenstein uses montage in different levels of his film, and finally montage of collision has become the major methodological and theoretical aspect of his films. Montage of collision is constructed in two broad methodological aspects. One, Eisenstein says logical, that means which the collision between two shots contribute to the thematical and narrative development. And second, he says illogical, where there is no concern in this montage of collision about the narrative development. It's only the development in the level of thought. For example, logical montage is a kind of montage, or we can take example from Odysseus step sequence, where we find a woman who is screaming, and in the next shot we find that the blood trickling down from her cheeks and eyes, and her spectacles, her pince-nez is broken down. So Eisenstein says that the conflict between these two consecutive shots generates a thematic meaning, that is violence, victimhood, as well as it contributes to an extent to the narrative flow. The illogical montage, for example, is we can best taken, for example, from Eisenstein's film October, where Eisenstein shows different objects and montage between different objects where it does not contribute to the narrative development, or it does not concern any character of the film, but the montage of different objects finally contributes in the level of thought. So this kind of method, he says, illogical method. So let's wrap up today's class with this message, that the theory of Eisenstein is mainly divided into two parts, montage of attractions and montage of collision, but montage of collision is the most important contribution of Eisenstein in cinema. Eisenstein later also developed his theory to montage cell, towards montage cell, which he published in 1937 as Montage 1937, but basically Eisenstein's montage is dominated by montage of collision.